challenge. So we bring everything in one single orchestration layer from, your earn, burn, rewards, engagement, personalization, merchant funded offers, discount. And that's essentially what we do as elevator pitch.
Okay, that's great. Can you talk to me how AI itself is changing what hyper personalization actually means in financial services?
Sure, Michael. I think the real shift is that personalization is moving from static segmentation to real-time customer moments. Now, for years, bank looked at customers through labels. I mean, you could have been a credit card customer, a mortgage customer, a priority banking customer.
Yep.
The problem is that those views were often disconnected, right? And AI changes that because now we can process signals from multiple sources at scale. It can look at product holdings, saving patterns, travel intent, etc., and build very uh, curated engagement journeys. And this happens through frameworks like RFM, recency, frequency, and monetary value.
Yep.
I think the whole idea behind where this is headed is that it's not about who spends the most. It's about understanding who's active, who's drifting, what are the moments they are in. But I still think one more bigger shift I'm seeing out of this is that this kind of personalization is no longer for high net worth customers with a relationship manager. Now AI is giving tools to banks and the ability that they can bring this level of minute understanding to every customer in their portfolio.
Right, because the costs have come down so much to provide that personalization. How important is either data fragmentation or data consolidation and maybe clean data in the ability for Pulse ID and your sort of financial services partners to be able to provide that hyper personalization, in the sense that if the data is siloed per se, at some level it needs to be, I guess, data laked or data combined so that they can then do cross-selling across different things and still maintain the level of loyalty that they want. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you could bring a very interesting point, and it's something that comes up almost in every conversation with the last tier one in the region. Idea is to first, of course, consolidate and bring all that data from different sources. Yeah. I'm sure you know that sometimes it's a challenge, the quality of data, where it sits, so to bring that, clean that data, and then align it with a loyalty reward engagement platform or a framework. So that's probably the stage one. There are other couple of filters that happen throughout the route, right? So stripping PI data, if you're going to use AI or any other one, using local rags, for example. So there are many other layers to, depending on what we're trying to achieve, how deep is that personalization? It goes through a couple of cycles to get where it needs to work.
What is the importance of the gamification as well? That was something that you mentioned right along with the personalization. And is the gamification part of this new, or is this something that's been done before, but just artificial intelligence makes it more superpowered?
So I think generally, the way most of the legacy, loyalty programs use gamification today is spin the wheel, scratch and win. Very annoying, very boring. Now, but if you use AI and you start personalizing, now it looks at which game does Michael engage with, what time, which channel, what kind of rewards does he use. So basically, we try and build intelligence behind everything we do. So gamification is one of them. I think it's a very important tool. It works pretty well if it's used at the right time, right channel, with right intent. It does bring back change in behavior that we're trying to promote.
Is there a way for the loyalty program itself to change or to adapt the user's behavior, particularly if you're giving them sort of personalized rewards? You know what I mean? And is that something that is a goal of the company, to be able to sort of change people's behavior and then make them more loyal as a result of that?
Absolutely right. So I'll take a step back, right? So the main core idea is to align loyalty reward KPIs with the bank or enterprise's KPIs, right? That's the biggest thing that we try to bridge the gap between. So it's not an independent cost center, but it's actually working towards the same KPI, right? Now that can be done in a number of ways. So if we, depending on how much data we have, how much of personalization, is the entity or program owner comfortable with, we can actually curate the kind of offers, the kind of benefits, discount, the kind of loyalty spend a particular segment or customer gets, right? So all of that could be now automated through using large language models.
So one of the issues that loyalty programs have is that, and I ask this all the time, but I'm curious what your opinion is on this, is that those rewards or discounts or whatever they are sit on a bank's balance sheet as a liability, right? And how does AI or personalization or gamification sort of enhance the ability for those rewards to get used and then hence taken off the balance sheet so it doesn't become this sort of expensive liability that's just sitting there. And now it's more of this sort of strategic engagement platform as opposed to just an expensive liability.
Correct. No, I think again, fairly good question, right? And
Thank you.
here's what we do. Like normally, we would probably try and introduce more merchant funded offers, discounts, or strategic partnerships, co-branding into the program. So this eliminates probably a decent percentage of that points liability that sits on a book, and the remaining has to be managed properly, right? Of course, a good program has rules in, like what was the expiry date on these rewards. What kind of behavior are we trying to change with these points? How are we measuring that? What actions are we taking to engage with customers? So if all of them work in silo, they don't work. But if they all are put through an LLM AI, which is looking at this daily as a dashboard, understanding what lever changes what behavior, it can be managed much better. And that's what we are doing behind the lines on the platform.
Do you feel like a platform like Pulse ID will now allow smaller institutions, in particular like SMEs and SMBs, to sort of have this democratized access to loyalty programs? You know, a guy with one or two coffee shops as opposed to a big airline, in the sense that because the compute is getting less expensive per se,
Correct.
that now it allows more people to have more loyalty programs where it was not possible before. And then on top of that, the personalization and gamification makes it more used there. So the business just increases naturally anyway.
Absolutely. So that's why we're rolling out. Right? So the way we've structured the whole ecosystem today is, on one end we have large tier one, banks, telcos, aviation, oil and gas, etc.
Right.
But the other end is SME merchants, right? So merchants participate in the program. This essentially becomes our content layer. So basically, how do we bring more eyeballs to their products and services, is then use that product or service at a merchant funded discount in the program. The program wins because it's merchant funded. Customer wins because it's discounted. Merchant wins because he's getting new eyeballs, right? So it's the whole ecosystem that actually works together in harmony.
Is there a way to innovate on the reward side, right? Like I feel like this new technology, because you can personalize things, you can create specific awards just for me that maybe you wouldn't be interested in, or that, my sister might not be interested in. But does this facility of artificial intelligence and even just like intelligence based or intelligence driven loyalty allow you to create new products that you couldn't create before because of all this new technology that's available?
We could, right? And maybe let me give you an example, which will
Please.
make it easier, right? So let's assume, Michael enjoys Starbucks or a coffee every morning.
I do. This is why I think about this, because I go to the same coffee shop every single day. I don't have a loyalty program.
There you go, right? So this example will resonate with you. So there are a couple of things, I as your program manager or bank could do. One is that I realize that transaction on that merchant or that category, and I can start rewarding you more for that, saying that we know you like coffee. After the third, fourth one is on us, or automatically just give you cash back on it. So there are multiple ways, invisible loyalty or more visible loyalty, depending on what approach I'm after. The other option is that I could have a merchant acquisition team who sits in the background and understands that these are the top 10, merchant categories where our customers are spending in. Let's go and proactively get merchant funded offers, discounts for them, and then tie up with those merchants, in this case, that coffee shop, right? So there are a couple of things that can happen. And this is all possible because all that data gets consolidated, easily available on a dashboard with recommendation on next best action, which is the beautiful end result of using LLMs.
Right.
And then that's the way the whole program gets more valuable.
So how long have you, as Pulse ID, how long have you been using the facility of LLMs, excuse me, into your loyalty program and technology stack? And maybe if you back up a little bit, just think like, what was your first experience with it, and how did it change the way as a firm you thought about the way to serve and access loyalty programs for your clients?
Sure. So we've been in loyalty rewards for last 10 years, but I think the last 4 or 5 years is when we started seeing, AI generally move from theory to actually, something that can be executed and practically used. I think the last 24 months has been parabolic in terms of how we have updated our tech stack with chat with data, hyper personalized way to even manage the platform in the background where you have a loyalty agent or manager sitting and helping you define loyalty rules, look at how the program is performing. So not
Right.
only the front end towards the customers, but even the back end.
Mm.
And I really see that growing by double digits as we move along because technology is getting easier. It's getting much sharper, and now enterprises are getting much more open to especially the tier one enterprises, which would probably shy away before, are now moving into using these new LLM models.
Did it change the mindset that you had internally as a company when you saw this stuff come in? And as the models improve as well, is there a way for the whole experience of the loyalty program to improve too?
Absolutely right. I think loyalty, rewards, or engagement in general is probably one of the best use cases for LLM. How you can actually personalize and engage better, understand customer needs better,
Mm.
start how will they react in next week, 10 days, etc. I think that's probably one of the biggest use cases overall in general from AI. Right. So I think this is a perfect fit for loyalty rewards in industry or vertical as a whole using LLM models. And I'm sure almost every loyalty manager is either experimenting, testing, or at least thinking about how can they leverage LLMs and AI within the program.
What kind of signals do you get from customers when they actually use the loyalty programs themselves, right? So you understand like which products, which rewards, which discounts that they actually appreciate the most. And then you take that data back internally. And does that allow you then to then serve better loyalty again, using the artificial intelligence and the LLMs that give you the ability to analyze this data much more quickly than you could before, and then serve that back to either similar cohorts or even back to the same person because you know that over time that that's the stuff they like the best.
It is right, and this is where it gets very interesting. So today we have capabilities to absorb not only transactional behavior, which in all honesty, most legacy loyalty programs did well, but now we can ingest a lot of behavior data, right? How
Mm-mm.
are you opening your app? How long before you uninstall your app if you have not engaged for how many days, right? So we can track so many different things now, and we can predict what cohort or micro segment do you belong to, and how do we improve you, or what iterations we need to run to bring you from a customer who's at risk or hibernating to become, say, a loyal or a champion. So these things can happen pretty fast and almost in the background automatically using LLMs and AI. And the beauty is that the more data it gets to train and the more outcomes it gets to see, it just gets better and more efficient.
Right. So that's the other thing I was going to ask you is that does all of this new technology, particularly in the last like 3 or 4 years, as you were mentioning, not just change the way you interact with your clients and potential clients, but also the way you interact with your own data internally? Has it required some amount of, I wouldn't say reorganization, but just a re-understanding of how you serve and save your own data and then use that data to analyze using the new artificial intelligence tools?
We do, right, and I think it's probably true to some extent for more or less majority of the fintechs out there. We are really adopting fast, learn fast, fail fast, right? So the idea is to see how or what value this new capability can bring in every aspect, right? So in operations, it could be how do we manage merchant renewals, negotiations? How do we reach out to merchants? So today
Yeah.
we have content over 100 plus countries. We are reaching out to merchants who primarily don't speak English as their
Interesting.
language. So yeah, there's so many unique ways to actually do this now. Use this. So everything from operationally to at the back end on development and bringing the platform live to even configuring the platform from an admin point of view to the end customer, right? So I think all four verticals are touched quite a bit with AI and LLM.
Do you find that there's a different interaction between the fintechs, which by almost by definition are younger companies? I won't even call them startups, but they're younger companies. That your interactions with them, particularly in their ability to use their tech stack to employ this new technology for rewards, is different than it is for established financial or incumbent financial institutions because of maybe some of the, what's the right word, the legacy systems that they have in place? Do you see different types of interactions?
Yes, I do, right, and that's probably safe to assume across not only our customer side but our partner and our competitor side, right?
Go
So
ahead.
there is legacy software or legacy solutions out there. Very difficult to maybe adopt into new technology, new stack because of how they were built and when they were built. So there is a challenge, but in most cases, I'm seeing people more or less abandon very legacy tech for more newer solutions because I think it's difficult to upgrade and improve. Of course, if you look at large enterprises like a tier one, there are things that have a very different life cycle. Let's take a bank, core banking solution, very different life cycle from a loyalty uh,
Mm-mm-mm.
solution or even a card management solution or a payment gateway, etc. So there are different life cycles that those solutions or those technologies go through. But I see that change where possible. They try to adopt add-ons, plugins, MCPs now, APIs, middleware to modernize the tech. But in most
Yep.
cases, it looks like legacy has to be completely replaced because it's just built with a different mindset, right? So very difficult to adopt to how LLM or AIs can actually leverage their full capacity.
Okay, one more thing before I let you go. Where is the relationship between artificial intelligence, customer data, even the PI stuff that you were talking about before, and financial institutions headed?
I think yeah. Just to circle back on that very important point, I think we're moving into an era of agentic enterprise. So this is where basically AI moves, like we were talking about, from theory to execution. Uh,
Mm-mm.
and then if we stick to financial services as our core sector, trust is the most important thing here, right? So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, the banks cannot allow an AI to casually roam across sensitive data. You can't have a model hallucinate a balance, for example. So we
Yeah,
have
yeah.
seen those early examples. Expose PI or make even decisions or recommendations without any control. So I think there are many layers that today we are using to solve for this. But if I were to consolidate, I think there are three main layers. So
Go ahead.
first, we sanitize the data, so we have a sanitization layer. So this is
Mhm.
where basically all the PI data is stripped, masked, or tokenized before anything even touches the model. The second, very interestingly, is governed retrieval, or what is known as RAG.
Yep.
So this is where AI is actually grounded instead of reading through everything freely. Very popular in regions where data regulations or residency is very very key and important, especially in banking and financial services. And I think the third one is the overall infrastructure itself right now, and this is very dependent on the appetite. So whether we're talking to a tier three bank, fintech, neo digital bank, tier one bank, what kind of regulatory requirements do they have? So this could be either an enterprise SaaS, a private cloud, on-prem deployment. So if that flexibility is built into the platform, these three layers actually really help deliver a solution that makes banking much more invisible and intelligence. I think the bank of the future almost is like an organ in your financial life. So it's invisible and it's constantly working in the background. So that's basically how I see this being delivered in summary.
Awesome. Okay, Sumit, I'm going to thank you so much for coming on and doing this today. I really appreciate it. We'd always love to have you come back and have a longer discussion on this as things change. But thank you so much for doing this today.
Pleasure's mine, Mike. Thank
Thank
you.
you.